The friendly neighborhood web slinger has been swinging since 1962. It's hard to remember everyone he swung at. Let's see if we can get those wheels turning, ladies and gentlemen. Clear any brain fog and you will soon learn that there were 3 villains referenced in this intro. The superiority complex this man has is almost laughable. The gentleman is his name, but he is literally anything but. His real name is Gustav, and he is the type that is considered a threat even in the underground. He also, and this is where the superiority complex comes in, he believes that he is part of a superior group and that most people in the world are simply wastes of space, and the only thing they provide to society is being cannon fodder. He is a villain, I'll give him that. His absolutely wild connection to Peter Parker. He was almost the guy that killed Peter's parents. He was trying to get Logan, but Peter's parents stepped in. In retaliation, the gentleman alerted another bad guy about the Parkers, and then that guy ended up being responsible for the parents. The gentleman did request for Peter's life to be spared so Peter could be a later challenge. It's messed up. He did learn about the accident that made Peter Spider-Man and even kind of protected the kid by ending anyone who knew Peter's identity. So he did good things in really twisted ways and bad things in twisted ways. If he does something, it's probably twisted. For all his superior thinking, he was just a regular human, no superpowers. His only power was financial power as he was rich. He did have a bodyguard named Pity with the ability to create darkness. This villain has 5 known appearances in the comics, but a what would have been a major role in the Amazing Spider-Man films. I love those movies, and the cliffhanger they were left on, I think about it once a week and get upset. The gentleman appeared in the mid-credits scene in the first movie, and after the big fight in the second movie, he's presumably the one hinting at forming the Sinister Six in that franchise. I'm so mad we never got to see it. Fogg literally slipped through our fingers. He does have a power. He can turn his body into green fog on command. He can make his body dense to an extent as well, like a ghost that can touch things and choke things. The villain is described as a slippery ghost of mist. He uses his powers to assist him in his line of work, that being a contract slayer. He actually started out as just a regular human that had a not so regular line of work, but when he was set to end a physicist, an explosion in the lab gave him his powers. He didn't work alone though. His partner in crime literally was Knight, but we will talk about him next. The duo was hired by Kingpin to take down the Arranger, and they did, and that's what brought Spider-Man into the mix. Spidey chased the criminals down and defeated them by knocking them out. That all happened in the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 165 to 167 in 1990. No one knew where they went for the longest time after this until 2004's Marvel Knights Spider-Man. They had a very small cameo in the scene where Venom is being introduced. After that, again, where are they? Moving on to the other half of the destructive duo, Knight, spelled like a medieval knight because that is what he was. The power he got from the lab explosion was the ability to turn himself into a knight, the medieval man of armor. The knight form is a very strong suit. It can resist most forms of harm, except for lots of electricity. That's what Spidey used to knock them out in that previously mentioned comic. Also, just so you know, the characters' real last names are Fogg and Knight. This was always in the cards for them. In the comics, it's theorized that the characters turned into their last names because that was how they saw themselves. So one thing about Peter's story is that he's bullied. He gets bullied in high school, right? We all know that. What if I told you there was someone who got bullied even more? Not to make this the Pain Olympics, but Peter is losing to Charles Wiederman, later Molten Man. He became Molten Man when he attempted to create a vibranium skin suit that would protect soldiers from any impact. The guy cut corners though, which led to the vibranium in the lab to blow up and attach itself to Charles. Now Charles was coated in vibranium and has all the powers that vibranium does. Unfortunately, the suit and the lab had a bunch of chemicals in them, and Charles's mental stability is soon holding on by a thread. He goes around on a slaying spree to find former classmates that bullied him. He took out a few people and burned down Peter's apartment. He's nothing if not thorough. Eventually, Peter realized that vibranium, Molten Man himself, can be hardened under extreme pressure, so Peter trapped Molten Man in a pressurized chamber which caused Molten Man's body to harden and prevent him from moving. The good news is Charles volunteered to get tested on for a cure to metals wearing people. Happens more often than you think in Marvel, and he was cured, lived happily ever after. Big Wheel is the villain, and he drives a, you guessed it, big wheel. His last name is also Wheel, so we should have seen this coming. Jackson Wheel was a villain even in his everyday job. He was a businessman, specifically a corrupt one that embezzled money. money. He hired this other villain called Rocket Racer to steal the evidence of his crimes, but Racer withheld the documents and asked for more money. He told Wheel that his jet-powered skateboard was going to keep at Wheel's case until he paid him. Wheel decided to hire the Tinkerer to create a weapon for him to fight the skateboard. That weapon was the Big Wheel, a large monowheel equipped with armor and various weapons. The Big Wheel and Spider-Man fought for the first time when Spider-Man was fighting Racer, actually. Wheel was after Racer and chased him through traffic, flattening cars on the way. The Racer led Big Wheel to the water, and just before Racer was going to get crushed and pulled in, he was pulled out by Spider-Man and the wheel fell into the Hudson River. He survived and would go on to cause chaos for various other heroes, including Spider-Woman. In total, Big Wheel has just under 20 appearances. The name Draco, when I say that, you probably think of the blonde from the Harry Potter series, but that name also belongs to an interesting Spider-Man villain. Q Drake was a scientist, winning a Nobel Peace Prize for his work in the field of biology. The man would turn out to be anything but peaceful though, and honestly was just the lizard in a different font. Drake's research project was combining iguana genes with humans, tested it out on himself, and became Draco the Dragon. He walked like a man but had the fire of a dragon as well as poisonous gas. He was huge and had these massive wings when there was this meteor shower, and that's when Draco first appeared, so it looked like he had flown down into space, also a play on the Draco constellation there. To top it off, he made such a grand entrance he declared he wanted to rule the Earth. Classic move! Spider-Man and Draco ended up fighting at the top of the Empire State Building, and when Draco fell off, he transformed into a little iguana and disappeared into a wall. That's it. This story was part of this thing Marvel Comics did in the 1970s, where they released a story on record instead of on the page, so it's no wonder he slipped away and we haven't seen him again. This guy makes me so sad. He was a villain at first, but he didn't want to be. Mindworm was born with his powers. They weren't good powers, so he was set up from the start. He had the ability to drain mental energy from people around him. His other powers were mental based too, like telepathy and mind wave blasts and illusions. He was also known to invade dreams, be a natural genius, and when he drains energy, he could do that to the point of death, but he didn't want to do that. Though he wasn't strong physically that much, he could absorb so much energy and make himself very strong, even strong enough to fight Spider-Man. The character has less than 10 appearances and has lived quite the heartbreaking life in those 10 appearances. When he was born, he didn't know how to control his powers. He was literally a baby, so he accidentally made himself an orphan. In the orphanage, people started calling him Mindworm. He aged out and moved to a neighborhood in New York where he could harmlessly feed off the residents. He was found by Spider-Man and the two fought each other. Spidey won, they fought again, and Spider-Man won again, but double won this time because Mindworm realized that he wanted to be a good guy. Unfortunately, Mindworm was taken advantage of by some goons and went to jail. He couldn't hold down a job after jail and became homeless and was eventually beaten on the street and passed before Spider-Man could help. It was really sad. R.I.P. Mindworm. Polestar, or Thomas Duffy, has had about 2 appearances, which means there really isn't much to tell here. He first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man 409 in 1996 and then died that same year in Spider-Man Unlimited 14. What did he do in that short time? Well, he was a player in the Great Game. Polestar, Rhino, and Joystick teamed up together to fight the friendly neighborhood web-slinger. Polestar wore a suit that generates a magnetic field, allowing the villain to attract and repel whatever he wants to fight with. It's also resistant to Peter's webbing. Of course, even 3 against 1, Spider-Man came out on top and Polestar went to jail. Eventually he got out but was shot in a different battle and perished. This fashion icon should be in the pages of Vogue, not forgotten. Belladonna, also known as Madame Belladonna to distinguish from another character with the same name, was an American in Europe. She opened a fashion design business with her sister and all was well, slaying the game, until this man came along and ruined everything. Roderick Kingsley, hashtag not my Roderick, came along and stole the sisters' designs and took them to America to sell. Also, Kingsley later became the Hobgoblin, so he sucks literally across the board. Madame Belladonna was rightfully very angry about her stuff being stolen and put together a team of henchmen to track the goblin down. The team found him and attacked, but Spider-Man swooped in to save the guy because he was just a defenseless human at this time after all. There were a series of fights until finally Belladonna and her henchmen henchmen were webbed up by the spider and left for the authorities. Belladonna only appears in 3 issues: Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man 43, 47, and 48. And we don't know where she is, if she's designing prison jumpsuits, I don't know. Other characters are now named Belladonna and have no correlation to her. Of what's been shown, Belladonna has no superpowers, but she is very good at chemistry and of course design. She has a gas gun that can render someone unconscious. She will also put this gas in perfume bottles for a more high fashion look. The gas and her name come from the Belladonna plant. Styx and Stones are the villains here. They had very different origins but are both super cool. So Styx was originally homeless and not doing well, so when Stone's team of scientists showed up looking for homeless people to experiment on, Styx was all for it since it paid well. It gave him way more than he bargained for though. His trial resulted in him becoming a living cancer. Anything he touched would rot away. Stone has powers like that too, plus his genius scientific mind, and he has a bunch of weapons. The difference between Styx and Stones is that Styx rots organic matter and Stone rots inorganic matter, so together they are the worst. To make everything even more unsettling, Styx can make his fingers longer, all the more easy to grab things to rot. The pair debuted in Amazing Spider-Man 309. They have fought not just Spider-Man, but also Deadpool. Deadpool is the choice to fight these guys, I think. The pair have about 10 appearances. Thanks so much for watching, y'all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and make your mark on the comment section down below. Let me know your favorite Spider-Man villain. Mine is now Belladonna, but even the ones that get lots of spotlight count too. This is Juliana, signing off. Bye!